Welcome back to Beyond the Curve. I have some great videos for you today. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, most of all, comment and subscribe. Interact with the video. Open your eyes, and let's do it.
But how does one actually become a private American national?
Good question.
Don Kalam suggests it's all about understanding the specific language in the legal definitions of citizenship and nationality.
So getting into the nitty-gritty of the legal code.
Right. He points to 8 U.S. Code Section 1401, which lays out the definitions of nationals and citizens of the United States at birth. He believes if you really study this code, you can figure out how to assert your status as a private American national. Don Kalam says that by operating as a private American national, you can gain more control over your finances, protect your assets from things like excessive taxation, and ultimately build wealth more effectively.
So he's promoting a more independent, self-reliant approach to finances.
Yeah, exactly. And he stresses that this requires a deeper understanding of the legal and financial systems than what's typically taught in school.
That's where his private education comes in.
Right. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge.
So this was about 2007, and I decided to move to Argentina because of that. And so for the first time in my life, I had to go, and I'm like everybody else, fearful of interfacing with the federal government and thinking they've got all this power and all that kind of stuff. And so for the first time in my life, I actually had to go get a passport. And when I went reluctantly to the post office and picked up the printed forms there in our little town and came back and put my feet on the desk, Michael, and started reading it, the DS-11, those were color coded. That one was orange and the renewal was purple. And I was reading the initial 111, and at the top of the first page was the answer I've been looking for 15 years. And that's the answer we're going to talk about today. And that is that you've got a choice here. They've stolen your power. And you can get it back. They can't say a darn word about it. It's inexpensive. It's non-threatening. And you basically switch back to whitey in the Jim Crow era. Okay. In Jim Crow laws, you had Jim Crow, who was the new federal citizen, who was mostly black, former black slaves, and you had whitey. That's why they had different facilities. Well, that manifests itself ethnically. But underneath, it was not an ethnic question. It was a political status question. The former black slaves had the new federal citizenship. See, before that, there'd never been a federal citizenship before. Okay. And that's what they assigned them. And whitey in that Jim Crow scenario was the old state citizen, now labeled as a national. Okay.
What are quote unquote mandates that aren't laws that people had to follow?
Mm-hmm.
Right? As a U.S. citizen, you don't have any rights. You don't have any, you don't have the Bill of Rights and you don't have the constitutional rights. You have privileges granted to you by a trust run like a corporation called the United States Corporate. And it's a 10 mile by 10 mile square in the District of Columbia. And they get us all in it at birth through our birth certificates.
Okay.
And then, you know, you guys both have had kids. There's something called a certificate of live birth. And then they walk up to you and they say, Ronnie, you got a healthy young daughter here. We need you to fill this out, this paperwork, and we need to get her a birth certificate. Right? And you fill it out. And then where does that go? It goes to whatever county she was born in. And it registers her with the county, just like you register your car.
Mm-hmm.
That's why at any point in time, the state can come up and say, Ronnie, you're an unfit parent. We're taking your child from you.
Yo, that was sick.
At any point in time.
Okay.
They get to decide that, right? Not saying that you ever would be an unfit parent, but they are the ones that decide whether you're fit or unfit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's a U.S. citizen. And if you study the history, and it's not taught in schools, but U.S. citizenships were set up by, you know, basically the Proclamation of Emancipation, right? When Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. That's when U.S. citizenship were set up. And that was because no state wanted to allow, and they made the process really lengthy for former slaves to become statesmen and women of their state. And so they had a huge problem on their hands. All these free men and women that don't have any state, they don't have any citizenship. So they created the U.S. citizenship, U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And they created the 10 mile by 10 mile square of District of Columbia. And that was their state. And they gave all the slaves U.S. citizenships. Now, how did we get to where we are today? Well, if you go back, you're probably, my great grandparents, they weren't U.S. citizens. They were statesmen and women, whatever state, like Kansan, that's my nationality now. I took that birthright back, right? Once you clarify and get a birth certificate, it trumps your statesman and your statesmanship.
Okay.
Right. And so that's when, and then what happens when you turn 18 is you register to vote and you register for a draft. And that's how they get you back into the system. And it's like, nobody knows about this because it's generational. They've just completely washed it out.
It's a corporation. Interesting. So one more question. The United States was a privately held company.
Yeah.
Still is.
Is it still?
Still is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, still is a privately owned company. Not the United States of America, not the 50 states collectively. The 50 states collectively, that's the republic. The United States of America Republic. Has
Which was
nothing to do with that at all.
1776. No,
they're still in the republic.
Okay, the United States Corporation,
Oh, yeah,
we're all pretty much all employees of, citizens of. That is still a privately held corporation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Is there records?
Well, of course there's records.
Where are they? How would we find that out?
Google.
Google, I doubt it.
It's all out
Google.
there. It's on Google.
Come on.
Look at all you have to do is go on the web and type in, just listen to the words I'm using, write down the words I'm using, and start with, look at, I'm not putting myself out there on the air talking about BS. Go on the web and type in this. Write this down and listen to what I'm saying. Go on the web and type in US, then VS, Victory Service, VS, Victory and Service, or VS, okay? US, VS, USA. So it's United States versus the United States of America, US versus USA.
Here it is right here. In 1871, Congress did expressly incorporate the District of Columbia. But District of Columbia and the United States are not one and the same.
That's right.
As in Act of 1871, Congress also extended the United States Constitution into District of Columbia. Actually, if you want to Google.
But there's two different constitutions.
Correct.
There's a Constitution of the United States, and there's a Constitution for the United States. The Constitution of the United States of America, or the Constitution for the United States. One is of the United States of America, and the other is for the United States. Of and for are two different words. Two different constitutions. They read almost identically the same, but there's been a couple of little words changed in one. The corporation has changed a few words. But that's all right. It's okay to do that because nobody reads anyway.
The United States of America, Inc. is a theory which claims the U.S. was transformed into a corporation in 1871. This is said to stem from a misunderstanding of historical events and legal terminology. The term corporation has evolved significantly, and its historical meaning differs from the modern business entity. The 1773 definition from Samuel Johnson's dictionary defines a corporation as a body politic, authorized by a charter to act as a single entity with specific powers, such as a guild or town. This aligns with etymological roots like guild, a fellowship under a sovereign's license, municipal, pertaining to a corporation like a city, and incorporate, to unite into one body. These terms reflect collective entities with legal recognition, not profit-driven businesses. In 1781, the Confederation Congress's chartering of the Bank of North America was controversial because the Articles of Confederation didn't explicitly grant Congress the power to create corporations. Here, corporation meant a legally recognized entity with a charter, like a government-sanctioned institution, not a private company. The debate focused on federal authority, not the U.S. becoming a corporation. Similarly, during the 1787 Philadelphia Convention, Roger Sherman was concerned that federal overreach could reduce states to mere corporations under the national government. He meant subordinate entities like municipalities, not businesses, aligning with the 1773 definition of a corporation as a subordinate body politic. The corporation theory centers on the Organic Act of 1871, which established a unified municipal government for Washington, D.C. The act repealed the individual charters of Washington and Georgetown, combining them with Washington County into a single territorial government with an appointed governor, a council, and an elected assembly. This addressed D.C.'s post-Civil War population growth, a 75% increase by 1870, and infrastructure needs, as existing local governments were inadequate. The term municipal corporation in the Act refers to a local governance entity, not a for-profit business, consistent with historical usage. Proponents claim the 1871 Act turned the U.S. into a for-profit corporation owned by foreign bankers. Detractors argue this misinterprets municipal corporation and the capitalized United States as evidence. A municipal corporation is just a legal entity for local governance, like a city, and capitalization in legal documents of the time is insignificant. Claims about constitutional changes or foreign ownership lack evidence, they argue, and the U.S. was not bankrupt in 1871, though it faced Civil War debts. The theory purportedly misreads statutes like 28 U.S.C. Section 3002, defining United States as a federal corporation for debt collection, out of context, as this applies to specific legal proceedings, not the entire government. Did the Organic Act of 1871 create a corporation? I'll leave that to the viewer, but I've also heard similar theories tied to the founding era and the Banking Act of 1933. That said, it's important to clarify that the term corporation in the 18th and 19th centuries referred to chartered legal entities, whether towns, banks, or governing bodies, not modern corporations in the commercial sense. If I had to guess, I'd say this theory likely arises from a misunderstanding of founding-era terminology or a misreading of statutes. Still, after the last 4 years, I wouldn't rule anything out.
The 14th Amendment is very questionable as to whether or not somebody can come over, have a baby, and immediately that baby is a citizen.
The court has pretty much said that it reads an immigrant's there. This is a minority legal opinion you're talking about.
There are many people that totally feel that
they may want it that way.
Amending is too big a deal. It's going to take, it would be 2 terms. I'd be in my 2nd term or my 8th year by the time, assuming everything went smoothly, because to amend the Constitution
takes a long time.
I believe,
especially on a very divisive issue.
I believe you can win it legally. Okay, I believe you can win it legally, and in any event, the parents have to leave.
The city-state of London and the Vatican, a 3rd city-state, was officially created in 1982. That city-state is called the District of Columbia and is located on 10 square miles of land in the heart of Washington. The District of Columbia flies its own flag and has its own independent constitution. Although geographically separate, the city-states of London, the Vatican, and the District of Columbia are one interlocking empire called Empire of the City. The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the First Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, the U.S. President was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810,
Well, the ancient Romans understood and finally figured out that there should be two laws on the earth. The earth is two things. The earth is water and land. So there should be a law for the water and a law for the land. So today we even have terms that say, well, that's the law of the land. Why do you distinguish it, law of the land? Because there's another law called the law of the sea or the law of water. So the law of the land is the laws that govern the culture of people on a particular spot of land. And so when you go to another country, you should be aware that there's a law of the land, which means there's a custom. You have to get used to the way people live and the way they do things. There's another law that supersedes that law, which is far more important. It's called the law of the sea. And the law of the sea is the law of water. And the law of water is simply banking, banks. Banks are all over the world. All banks operate the same. They operate on water. And so the bottom line is that your commerce is based on water. All ships, airships, rocket ships, sailing ships, I don't care what it is. If it's a ship, it's always referred to as a female. It's always she. The captains of any ship will tell you, oh, she's a good ship and she's seaworthy and oh, she's this and she's that. What do you mean she? The reason why captains call their ships she is because she delivers the product. And the product is usually based on water, and when her water breaks, there's a product. And the product was caused by the male manufacturing. So he has manufactured and she is in labor building the product. And so the product is based on water because when her water broke, the product comes out. If you're going to get married, you have to have a license because getting married, according to our laws today under the corporation, if you were getting married, you are an employee whose first duty is to the corporation. And so therefore you need to work and pay your bills and pay your taxes and everything because you're a security for the body social. The body social means the whole company. When you retire, which means you're going to bed, you're going to sleep, or you're going to quit, you're going to retire, you get Social Security. No, you are the security for the body social. And so they're going to give you a few dollars to live on, keep you alive, because if they don't,
because we, as a natural resource, have been pledged to a group of men as bankers as a natural resource. They own our wages. They own our wages. It's pledged. Get a Black's Law Dictionary. Look this stuff up. I'm not making this up. This is reality. We have literally been sold out. Literally. Since 1933. And they can't let us escape because if we migrate out of here, they don't have a word for us. You know, and we have a very low tolerance for tyrannies here. Very low tolerance. And if they can disarm everybody, and if they do suspend the Constitution, then you don't have to worry about Second Amendment infringements. There is no Second Amendment. That's how they're going to get around it. There's no way they're going to ratify the Second Amendment. What they're going to do is they're going to suspend the Constitution. Then you have no rights. They set the whole thing up to do it that way. If they can disarm everybody, then it's done. It's over. No, I'm not an advocate of violence. I'm not. Absolutely not. But I'm not an advocate of slavery either.
100,000 acres. And that Chinese-owned land is across 27 states. You can see the map there on your screen. The states topping that list are Texas and North Carolina. Now,
Canada owns 30 times more U.S. farmland than China and 40 times more than Bill Gates. Look at the top 10 foreign holders of U.S. farmland. Do you see China there? Out of the 109 countries that own U.S. farmland, China is ranked number 18. Yeah, they don't even own 1 million acres. They own 384,000. Bill Gates has about 250,000. So let's get the idiotic conspiracy theories out of your head. And yes, other countries have been slowly increasing their purchase of U.S. farmland because we have some of the best farmland on Earth. We have over 879 million acres of land that can be used for agriculture. Only 3% of that farmland is owned by other countries. The rest is all American owned. Keep in mind that the US has the most farmland in the world. We have over 89 million more acres than Russia and over 100 million more than China. Fun fact, the Cayman Islands own more U.S. farmland than China does. Almost half of the U.S. farmland that's owned by other countries is forests. 29% is just crops. 18% is pastures, so livestock, cattle. And a lot of that forest land is purchased in Maine. Some of that foreign-owned land is actually used to generate renewable energy.
This map shows all the federally owned land in the United States. As we can see, there's a lot of it over here and not a whole lot over here. Well, some of this is national parks, not all of it. A lot of it is owned by the government as BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, or is owned by the military for military testing, like Area 51, which is over here in Nevada. This has actually become a bit of an issue because many of these states and counties within these states have almost no tax money because the federal government is not paying state taxes or county taxes. And so it becomes a bit of an issue when 90% of your land or more is owned by the federal government instead of being used for other purposes like ranching, farming, or even being able to build schools. Now, you might think that that's not a big deal, but in places like Nevada and Utah, it is, because basically everyone in Utah lives in this little corridor in this valley. Also, Nevada, this is the freeway. And that's the only place that you get to live in Nevada. A lot of this is also national parks, which are great. But it does beg the question, why aren't these state parks, if they're completely within California or completely within Idaho, why is it that it needs to be a national park and not a state park when state parks are also great? Now, don't get me wrong. I love me some parks. I go to them all the time. I live over here, so I go to parks all the time. But when states on the East Coast barely have any land taken from the federal government versus the West Coast, which has almost all their land taken, you really have to think. If you went through these gigantic states and you actually took the proportion of land that is privately held or held by the state government, it'd be smaller than many of the states on the East Coast.
The bloated bureaucracy is a big concern for conservatives. They say the federal bureaucratic state has become so huge that it is now a de facto fourth branch of government, and in fact, maybe the most powerful branch. As Paul Strand reports, experts will tell you it's completely unconstitutional.
If there's one thing the Founding Fathers cared about, it was liberty. And the last thing they would have wanted was an unelected bureaucracy that could steal your property, your rights, and even your freedom.
It's fifth grade civics all over again, right?
Law School Assistant Dean Richard Kelsey says those Founding Fathers were clear and deliberate about what they'd allow constitutionally.
They took a lot of time trying to figure out how to get this right. Remember, we had the Articles of Confederation first. Didn't work. So we got together, had a constitutional convention, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do we make this delicate balance of power. They're supposed to make the laws, propose the laws, be answerable to the people, and the president is not a lawmaker. His job is to either say no to this law or yes to this law.
But the unceasing cancerous growth of the executive branch's bureaucratic agencies has upset this careful balance and made unelected bureaucrats super powerful.
They're like a fourth branch of government now, and they are unaccountable, they're unanswerable to the voters, and they can get away with just about anything they want without any consequences.
And that's allowed modern presidents to basically take the law into their own hands. And President Obama has made this his forte, unconstitutional though it may be.
What he's doing now is he's saying, hey, Congress isn't working. It's not doing what I want. I'll go around Congress. Nothing allows him to do that. It's not even being hidden anymore. The president has come right out and said, if the Congress won't act, I will act. And he's doing it through these bureaucracies.
And now they literally wield life and death power over people.
They are issuing regulations often with criminal penalties. That's something only Congress should be able to do. And yet these unelected bureaucrats have the ability now to declare that certain actions will potentially land you in jail. That's how powerful they've become.
And in many...
That was sick. I don't know how many more do you know.
Today I want to show y'all a little proof that we are living in the Matrix. Now, many people will state that the Matrix is this fictitious world that is overlapping our original world. Now, y'all just follow me real quick because we going somewhere. Now, under the United States Code 28, they will state that the United States is a federal corporation, an agency, department. You know, your Department of States, commissions, boards. So I just want to show y'all this United States Code because a lot of people still believe that they are living in a country. This law right here tell you that the United States is actually a corporation. Okay, now let's look up the definition of corporation, y'all. The corporation is a legal entity distinct from its owner. So the corporation is this whole fictitious entity. So basically what I'm saying, y'all, the Matrix is this corporation that you are living in. The Matrix is not our original homeland, and we are being governed by aliens. The aliens, they sit at the top at their round table, and they pass.
By aliens, he means demons, reptilian shapeshifters, beyond the ice wall, from inside the earth. He means anything but outer space because there's a firmament. Remember that, people.
Laws. And you know, these laws that will be passed will only benefit the aliens and not the indigenous people. This is the silent battle that is taking place in America. You have this international foreign corporation versus the indigenous people of America.
The United States was not conquered by a foreign enemy. It was sold. Citizens United was not just a ruling, it was a death certificate for democracy. Before 2010, corporate money had limits. Then the Supreme Court ruled that money is considered speech and corporations have First Amendment rights. Campaign finance laws collapsed overnight. Super PACs multiplied. Anonymous money poured in. In the first election after Citizens United, outside spending tripled. By 2020, it had exploded to over $2.6 billion. Billionaires like Sheldon Adelson and Michael Bloomberg wrote personal checks for hundreds of millions, and corporate donors funneled cash through dark money networks. This was not free speech. This was the legalization of corporate rule. The lawmakers who were supposed to serve the people now served their donors. Wall Street got deregulated. Big Pharma jacked up prices. Defense contractors secured endless war budgets. The country was not taken by force. It was bought. The laws, the policies, the decisions that shape your life were drafted in boardrooms. Corporations are not just participating in government. They are the government. There is no political solution to this. There is no reform that will undo it. The system will not correct itself. It will tighten its grip. And by the time people realize they were never in control, there won't be anything left to take back.
Well, those are all the videos I had for you today. I really hope you liked them. Don't forget to hit that like button, share, comment, and subscribe. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you. Yo, that was sick.